Hey everyone, welcome to Rebloom, the podcast where we explore the power of change, rediscovery, and living with intention.
That's right. We're your hosts, Lori and Jamie, two friends who really love a good story about transformation.
In each podcast, we're going to chat with inspiring guests who've made bold pivots in their lives or careers. They've let go of what no longer served them to embrace something more authentic, joyful, and true to who they really are.
And the best part, many of them reconnect with passions or dreams they discovered as kids. It's about finding the seeds planted long ago and letting them bloom again.
So if you're ready for real conversations about reinvention, purpose, and following your creative heart, you're in the right place.
Let's dive in and see what it takes to rebloom.
Lori, our listeners are in for the biggest treat today. What a conversation we had with Meaghan Murphy. Oh my gosh.
I took so many notes in this talk, just so many nuggets that I am going to apply to my own life. I loved, she talks about the need to haves, the things that you need to have every day in your life to have a day of gratitude and yay. And, just even thinking about that I started pondering, what are those things for me to, just be happier every day? And I love the different buckets that she talks about in her book that help you to live a fully charged life, which is the title of her book. I can't wait to get it. So it was an amazing chat.
This is an amazing, authentic conversation, and dear listeners, you're going to love it. Enjoy. Hey, Lori, how are you?
I'm terrific, and this is going to be a really good interview today. I found Meaghan recently because she featured my friend Lee Stanley from Curly Girl, I think on the Today Show, and I just did a comment. I just said, cool. And then all of a sudden, I'm like going down the rabbit hole, finding out who she is. And then we're talking, and lo and behold, now she's on our podcast.
We are so excited. Welcome, Meaghan Murphy. How are you today?
I am so good. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for joining us. I mean, and that is the beauty of social media. Sometimes you reach out, you send someone a direct message, and boom, they're talking to you. And here you are.
Yep. Pretty cool.
Oh, pretty cool. Well, let me give our listeners just a quick thumbnail. I don't even know that I can do it quickly. We might need a whole nother podcast, Meaghan, just for your resume. You are incredible. Meaghan has been the editor of Good Housekeeping. She is currently the editor-in-chief of Women's Day. She has been on the Today Show. She's been on Kelly and Mark. She's had a series on NBC. She's been a chief spirit officer. She's written a book called Your Fully Charged Life. She's worked for incredible brands like Teen. She's been on MTV and Victoria's Secret. She even helped to launch the Pink line. Like, oh my gosh, everybody loved that line. Meaghan is huge into fitness. She's worked for Self. And Meaghan, we cannot wait to hear all about your incredible journey. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yay. I say yay a lot. Thank you for having me.
Well, I know on your post,
you have a yay.
Yeah. Daily doses of yay on your feed.
No doubt.
We need a lot of yay. So were you initially interested in journalism, communication? How did you get going on your journey?
So it's a kind of an interesting trajectory. I write about it in my book, but I had some I like to call them tumultuous teen years. It sounds more romantic, but I had a raging eating disorder. I was hospitalized a number of times. My best friend passed away. I hit rock bottom, and then I made my mess my message, and I wrote about it. And in writing about it, I won a scholarship, an essay contest. I was named a Horatio Alger National Scholar. I won $10,000, and I was featured on an Oprah-esque NBC special. Don Johnson and Bob Costas presented an award. Trisha Yearwood performed. It was like this whole big thing. And from that, magazines approached me, Teen YM at the time, and was like, "Oh, we want to tell your story." And I said, "Oh, I'll write my story, and I'd love to be an intern. I can start Monday. See you then." And that's kind of what happened. I wound up having
Yeah.
this magazine career, everything by virtue of having made my mess my message, being vulnerable, sharing my struggle, and connecting with other people in a very public way was really the launch pad for my career.
Wow.
It's super important. Super, super important to do.
Well,
That's incredible.
and brave
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What
It
age
was,
were you then?
I was only 16. I was 16
Mm.
when my friend passed, and I was like 17, really, really in and out of inpatient and outpatient treatment and really, really struggling. Um, and it took a lot of work and a lot of guts to get better. And, I think part of my healing was, and it's always been, is sharing and connecting. Like for me, my healing magic is always in connecting with other people and understanding that other people have been through hard things too, and kind of connecting on how we all get through it.
Wow. So which
Absolutely.
magazine did you start that career with?
So that was at YM magazine. It was called Young Miss, Young Modern, Young and Modern. I mean, the name changed several times, but it was YM. So I started my career. They made me a contributing editor when I was 19 years old.
Wow.
And I was actually going to college and working at the magazine. And then my boss at the time got called over to Time Inc. to start another new magazine for teens, yet to be named. And she brought me with her. And then we created Teen People magazine. So at
Wow.
that point, I
I
was
remember that.
finishing,
Yeah.
yeah, I was finishing college. I studied acting at Mason Gross School of the Arts at Rutgers. I was working on that magazine, and then I wound up getting a job too as on MTV. So I was a host on MTV in the '90s, working on launching Teen People, finishing my degree. It
That's
was a
so
busy
interesting.
time.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting that you blended acting in there with the
Yes.
writing, which really makes sense for where you are now and some of the things you're
Yes.
doing.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's the thing is, so like I was in I was in the Miss New Jersey pageant, and I started auditioning for commercials. Like I always loved to perform. I really liked to be somebody else. I liked to step outside of myself. I just loved a script, and I loved to be out there performing as somebody else. Which is ironic because now I kind of perform a lot as me,
Right.
but I still feel like
Yeah.
television Megan and not like mom Megan. But yeah, so it was this really interesting synergy of like, oh, I could write, I could host, I could act, I could be on camera. Like even when I started at MTV, I was writing my own scripts and all the treatments. Like I was on the Carson Daily show, and I also wrote treatments for MTV News, even if it wasn't what I was performing.
I love that. Now, so Lori often asks this question about your childhood, and I'm immediately thinking, where does this confidence come from? Was your childhood very creative? Did you feel like, I mean, that's pretty early too to be so creative and be that confident too.
So I would say my mom was a teacher. And I
Mm.
grew up in a house that felt like a classroom in some ways. Like I can remember her putting like brown paper on the kitchen wall and just like having markers and crayons available at all times to just like draw on the kitchen wall on this like paper that was hung. Like
I
she
love
was,
her.
yeah, she
I
was,
love
Yeah.
your
I
mom.
mean, and she, thank God, like she's still here. Yay.
Yay.
But like she would make like macaroni angels for the Christmas tree. She would sew our, our holiday outfits. So like my mom was always creating, and always teaching, and like so like my home now is just like an explosion of celebration and decorations and life at all times. I mean, it's like I joke that it's like part kindergarten classroom, like part, Pier 1. I don't know. Like it's like if you feel like you're kind of like at Home Goods and like a holiday party and a classroom all at once.
Oh, I bet your kids love that. And that's one of the
No,
Yes.
things.
no, they
No,
don't.
they
My
don't
kids'
really.
friends love it. My kids' friends love it. And I know that my kids will someday do this in their own homes. It wasn't like
Yeah.
I was like, oh, mom, I appreciate all this stuff in my house. No, my appreciation is now I do it in my own house, right?
Uh-huh.
Like it wasn't like kids can't. Like my kids are 14, 12, and 11. I'm cringy, right? But their
Yeah.
friends come over and are like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, Mrs. Murphy, do you have any projects for us? And it's
Oh my
like, I'm
Yeah.
like,
gosh.
yes, I do. Who wants
At,
to make a
at
toy
all
soldier?
times. Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. So when we interviewed Todd Oldham recently, he described his childhood growing up where they had like a craft table in the middle of their family room.
Yeah.
And so that's just part of his being. And I feel
Well,
like it's
also
part of
though, like,
yours.
I don't feel like we called it crafting. Like that's like
No.
it wasn't like let's do a craft project. It's just like we were just always making.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
that's the
Yeah.
difference, right? Like it wasn't like let's make like it was just there was always paint. There was always like some crazy thing happening with like dried noodles or flowers or glue. Like it was just always we were always making.
That sounds like my house
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
when my grandsons come over. Yeah, they'd walk in the door and say, "I want to do a project, Mimi."
But it's funny now too, because like my youngest son who's 11, like I'm like evolving what projects look like, right? Because he's all of a
Hmm.
sudden very into like editing. So like he loves to take
Mm.
CapCut and to like, splice videos together and add captions and music. And I'm like, that's a way of creating too.
Oh,
So I'm trying to
absolutely.
like
Yes.
embrace that. Whereas like he might not want to get the hot glue out gun out anymore, but he might want to take that project that we made where we made these ornaments with cookie cutters and old cards and and that
Yeah.
I'm like embracing that some of that digital creation.
That's
Yes.
a really good lead into some of the things that we talk about on this podcast. Being titled Rebloom, people are, well, who we're interviewing, they're often moving from one thing that maybe wasn't them or wasn't authentic to them into something that is. And I love that you're recognizing that in your kids and then kind of helping them to embrace that side that they're drawn to creatively. Because
Yeah.
creativity doesn't have to look one way to every person.
Right.
It can be gardening, it can be cooking, it can be making bourbon, it could be anything
Yeah.
as long as it's connecting to what you love and what you're passionate about.
And I think like with my kids too, like this is kind of a funny story. Like, I know my daughter is very, very creative, but I can't force my creativity upon her. So like she doesn't want to make traditional projects or traditional crafts. But the other night she was studying and she thought we all had gone to bed. And the elf on the shelf does some shenanigans in our home. And she had somehow helped the elf create this insane shenanigans where like there was chocolate poop throughout the kitchen and I was like and I said to my husband, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of her. That was so creative. I love this so much. And he's like, oh my God, I like you're getting excited about, chocolate deer poop. And I'm like, yes. And it was like, this beautiful expression of her creativity, like outside of what I might want her to do, like which would be to
Yeah.
like make a boxwood wreath.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly. And they don't like to do what they don't like
You
to
like,
do.
Yep.
and I think but it's so fun too, because as a teacher, and Lori and I both teach, and when you share, even as a mom, I have kids as well. And, you say, okay, this is the way we're going to do it. And then you watch them go off in a completely different direction. You're like, I didn't even think of that. And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of just going, oh, wow, yay, that's what makes us all individuals. It makes it so amazing.
That's one thing I love about when I teach the creative retreats is, I'll share the technique
Yeah.
of the medium, but then people use them in ways that I never thought of. It's really,
Yeah.
really fun. But we digress. We need to get
We
back.
digress. We're
We
back
need
to you. I
we
know.
need to get back to Meaghan's journey. So
So yeah,
bring
go
us
ahead.
along.
You're doing that. You're doing editing and you're moving along, and tell us what was a pivot point along this journey of yours.
So I've been a magazine editor for 30 years, which is like so scary and hard to say out loud. No, like I don't feel like I have
Wow.
enough life to have been doing this for 30 years, but I would say there's consistent pivot points in my life and in my career. And it all kind of stems from the fact that I'm really good at being where I am. I'm very, very good at being present. And I attribute a lot of my acting background and training to that, to really like be grounded in the present and be aware and wherever your feet are, that's where you are. So I've always really been very attuned to what I was doing and where I was at in my life. And my career sort of mirrors that. So when I was a teenager, I was making
Mm-hmm.
teen magazines. And then when I was in my 20s and I was dating and in the city, I was a cosmopolitan editor. I was a senior editor at Cosmo magazine
How about that?
at that time in my life because that's where I was, right?
Wow.
And
The
like
quizzes, were you
I wrote
responsible
the
for the
quizzes.
quiz?
Yeah, I
Those
wrote
are
the
always
Cosmo quizzes.
classic.
I'm super proud of
Yeah.
then in my so-called self-formative years where I wound up getting engaged and getting married and starting a family and having my 3 kids, like that was where I worked at Self Magazine. I worked at Self Magazine when I was really, really honing and fine-tuning myself for 9 years as the deputy editor and the fitness director. And then this the irony is not lost on me. When I bought my first house in the suburbs, I moved over to Good Housekeeping magazine and I became the executive editor of Good Housekeeping for 7 years. Um, and then during the beginning of the pandemic, I was tasked with taking over Women's Day. I've been the editor in chief of Women's Day for 4 years. And amongst all of that, I wrote a book. I wrote a book that came out in February 2021. It's called Your Fully Charged Life. And that was a really important part in my journey and my career as well. The magazine industry has changed dramatically since I
Mm.
started when I was 19 years old or 18 years old. I used to make 14 issues a year. Now we make 6 issues a year. I used to have 50 people on my staff. Now I have myself. So like the industry has changed very much. And so a big piece of my journey was I want to own my IP. I want something that is mine. I want to write this book so that when a magazine goes away or something somebody else owns that I work for goes away, I have something that is mine that I can speak to, that I can represent, that feels like my voice that I own.
Right.
And so that was very important to me. I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and wrote and worked on this proposal and this book for 3 years while running a magazine, and raising 3 small, tiny children. And even, I mean, it was unthinkable times for me, but I knew I had to have something I owned and I created.
Let's take a quick minute and thank our amazing sponsors. Our podcast is proudly brought to you today by Jet Creative and Urban Stems. Jet Creative is a women-owned marketing firm committed to community and empowerment since 2013. Are you ready to rebloom and build a website or start a podcast? Visit jetcreative.com/podcast to kickstart your journey. They will help you bloom in ways you never imagined. And bonus, our listeners get an exclusive discount when you mention Rebloom. And a huge thanks to Urban Stems, your go-to and our go-to source for fresh, gorgeous bouquets and gifts delivered coast to coast. Use Bloom Big 20 and save 20% on your next order. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Rebloom Podcast. Thanks to our sponsors, and thanks to you for joining us today.
So I have 2 questions for you. One is just going back a little bit on what you shared about how your adventures mirror what's happening in your life. Was that intentional on your part? Did you seek out those things? And then my second question is I want to get back to the book and talk more about that and what's in it.
So I can only see the pattern now in hindsight, right? Like as I was bopping around in my career, it wasn't like, it was not calculated. I'm not a person, I follow my heart. I follow my passion. If I don't care deeply about something, I can't do it well. So it just made sense that what I cared about kind of coincided with the audience of the product, right? Like certainly
Yes.
right now you couldn't pay me to write for, dating advice for 20 somethings. Like I punch me in
Yeah.
the face. Like I have nothing to say.
Well, plus we have no idea. Now
Right?
it's also
Yeah,
cheap. Yeah.
exactly. So
What
it
happened to
wasn't
just
like
going and calling people and going out on a date?
like
It's
teaching
so
my
good.
kids how to answer a phone.
Yeah.
Like it was not intentional or calculated in any way. It was just that I know that in order to do anything well, I have to care. In order for me to care, I have to see myself in it in some way. Um,
Yeah.
and that's how that happened. My book, knowing I needed to write the book, was a different journey. My father was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Mm.
Mm.
He'll be gone 9 years in January. And at that time, it was a deep period of self-reflection, and something my dad celebrated in me was my transformation. So when I was this angsty, really troubled child, nicknamed Grumpy, Neggy Meggy, to get to this place where I was a happy mom, kind of thriving, I mean, I really did some really hard work to get to this place of positivity. And he said, like, that's your thing. Like, that's what you need to share, and maybe do it in book form, and challenge accepted. I was like, you're right. This legacy of positivity is what I want to leave behind. And I want to share how I did this, right? As a journalist, especially, I'm an evangelist for information. So if I care about something or I figure something out, I absolutely want everyone to know about it. And I figured out how to live differently. I figured out how to live with joy and optimism, even when things were hard. And I felt very compelled to tell that story and to write that book.
So we just interviewed a woman. Her name is Hildy Dunn, and she was a life coach for 15 years, but then she went through an experience with her father also, he was diagnosed. I'm not sure what he was diagnosed with, but he ultimately passed. And now she's a death doula. And I sort of had some epiphanies because I lost both parents, my mom in 2020 and my dad in 2021. And I do feel like sometimes when you're faced with something like that, it really makes you take stock of where you are. And I love that your dad was the encourager for you to really think about your life in that way. I love that.
Well, and I think it's also because it's like, I hadn't really thought about, in thinking about, and in watching him think about his legacy, it forced me to think about my own.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like,
Mhm.
Yep.
really, like, how do I want to leave this planet? And how do I want to be remembered? And like,
Mm-hmm.
why am I here? What is my gift, my contribution? And I really worked hard to transform from Neggy Meggy into somebody who really is joyful and optimistic.
Well, and I think this book is so important and so important for young people. So, to let you know too, Meaghan, we lost our daughter a year ago, and
Oh my
a little
God.
over a year ago, and she lost her battle with mental illness. And I think that these young folks, young people, it's tough. It's very tough, and they need to see someone that has worked so hard
Yeah.
and been able to come out on the other side. And I think that's the challenge. When they're in the thick of it, they can't see the other side. And for you to write something that helps them to see, yes, it was hard, it was tough, but there is a bright and beautiful light. That's an important gift. It's an
And like,
important gift
God,
for
like,
others.
that breaks my heart. Cause I think like,
Yeah.
mental illness is no joke. And I deal
Yeah.
with that in my own family. Um, And I think one of the biggest resilience tricks that I learned was having resilience role models. And like when
Yeah.
things are really, really hard, just to find somebody, whether it's somebody on Instagram or a celebrity, a neighbor, somebody who's done the hard thing that you're going through, just for proof that it's doable.
Yes.
I think that is
Yes.
so important. Like, I had a double mastectomy recently, and it was hard. And in those moments where I'm like, this sucks. Why? Oh my God, this. Looking to the woman who a year later is back at the gym and feeling great. It's like you just need
Right.
proof. You just need to know it's possible. Even just that little modicum of possibility gives you a little bit more strength to do hard things.
Hmm.
It does. And I've been very honest about our journey, and particularly on social. And I try to share things that are joyful, because just a little bit of joy brings me joy.
Yeah.
But I've been very honest about our journey, which has helped others too, to understand and to see that, we will never be healed, but we will move forward. And to show people that light. And what you're doing is helping people, whether it's through your initial bout of, the initial disease of anorexia, which is, to get through that, you love, yay you. That's very difficult. And you were a young child. If you look back, a very young child trying to get through that. And back when people didn't really have all the tools either. There were not a lot of tools in any parent's tool chest to help you.
My best friend was also anorexic, and she passed away jumping out of the car to be hospitalized with me. It was very traumatic. And when I look back on that now, I'm like, oh my goodness, like that was hard.
That's horrible.
Because now that I'm a mom and I have teenagers, and I'm like, I was 16, like my daughter's 14. I can't imagine her having to go through that.
Yeah. And you did.
Yeah.
And you did.
Wow.
And, having these kids but providing that light that you're doing for that fully charged life at any point, whether you're young, whether you're in your 20s, whether you're that is Lori, that is our goal here, to say life is short. Follow your passion, follow your heart, exactly what you have done. And what Lori and I try to do, we're trying to hopefully help others to say, you can do that. Because if you can see that joy, if you can see that life, that light and life, you can do it. You can do it.
Tell us about some of the advice and things that you share in the book that would be helpful to our listeners.
So the book is called Your Fully Charged Life. And really what I sought to do was to take Dr. Martin Seligman, who is the forefather of positive psychology. So back in I guess it was like the late 80s, early 90s, Dr. Martin Seligman looked at the field of positive psychology and he said, maybe we got this all wrong. Like, we're looking at what's wrong with people and trying to fix it. What if we did the opposite? What if we looked at what was right with people who are thriving and happy and tried to tease out and emulate those key characteristics? And he came up with the PERMA theory of wellness. The P is for positive emotions, the E is for engagement, the R is for relationships, the M is for meaning, and the A is for accomplishment. And he found that people who fill those buckets and live richly in all of those areas thrive. And so what I really set out to do was to fun filter the theory and teach people how to do that in many aspects of their life on a daily basis. And you have the different chapters, the positive charge, the extra charge, the recharge. Really what my book does is give you a toolkit for living fully charged or perma-charged, really. And there's lots of news you can use, actionable tips, micro actions, little things you could do on a daily basis to inch the happiness needle and to live differently. And the key is some of them you can roll your eyes out. Like, I go on and on about how important it is to make your bed. But if you think that's crazy and you never want to make your bed, I don't care. Something else is going to stick. But I know for sure that making your bed fills the A in accomplishment, sets you up for a day of success. Lots of research around it.
That's so funny you brought that up, because my husband, he's always like, why don't you make your bed? And I do make my bed, but I make my bed in my way. It's not his military style way.
I do make the bed every day. But I agree with that. I think if you get up, I don't know. It just makes me feel like we're put together. You start in a little more organized way.
That's what all the research says, right? Like, you cannot control what is going to happen in your day, and your to-do list may never get to done. But if you start by making that stinking bed, check. That is one thing that you have done before you even leave the house. And it really does fill you with a sense of accomplishment first thing in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. I'm going to share that one with my whole family, and I'm going to be better about it. You just made my husband very happy.
I could be leaving for the airport at 3 a.m. and I will push my husband out of the bed and make it. Because I can't, it's literally the only thing I can I can accomplish and control in my entire day. And so I want to do it.
So you're playing in many lanes. You are an editor of a magazine. You're a fitness expert. You wrote a book. You're on TV a lot. how do you manage all of that and stay positive every day? Because I know a lot of people would get very stressed out and they might have a meltdown.
Yeah.
So I do get stressed out, right? But I've got a toolkit to process most of that stress. I know my non-negotiables, right? And like I think part of what I do in my book is help you figure out what your non-negotiables are. I have to move. I need movement every day. That could be a class, even better because I also need community. So like I love to go to my barometric class because I move my body and I see my people. And they're not like blood relatives. It's just my community. I don't even know everyone's last name, but they're my community. I need to show up for people and I need people to show up for me. So I need a sense of community. I need movement. I need sunlight and vitamin D in some capacity. Like those are things that I know I need to have on a daily basis to be okay. And so I give myself those things. I'm also really good at saying no. I'm a relentless no sayer so that I can say yes to what matters. I don't give out yeses easily because I don't want to, like, I don't want to say yes to something that doesn't really matter.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said yes to us.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. Thank you for saying
Aw.
yes to us because
I
we
had a
believe that this
podcast
matters. Yes.
I
Oh,
had a
did
podcast
you?
for 3 years and I love podcasts. I love chatting. I love deeper dive, like because everything on social
Yeah,
media is so quick and I just love
it is.
conversations. I love connection. I love people. I love hearing people's stories and telling stories. I find it very inspiring to talk and to listen.
I absolutely agree with that. And I was a very reluctant podcaster because I've shared this. You know, Jamie said to me, we're doing a podcast. And I'm like, I don't have the personality for that. I don't know the tech about that, all the things, but we've kind of muddled through together and,
Figured
you
it
know,
out.
faced some fears and did it. And we're so proud of ourselves now. We're into like our 20 something episode. And so it's
Yeah,
new, but the conversations we're having, like the one today, like I'm just writing down copious
so
notes.
important.
And I don't have your book yet, I will admit, but I will be ordering it and giving it to friends because I think the
Yeah,
message
ditto.
behind it is so important. I love that you wrote this book. I just love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that's a lot of what our listeners have told us. And exactly, we felt the need to do this. We felt the need to have conversations and to make these pivot points to make people feel that they could do them if they followed their heart, if and that other people were just as scared, but they went and did it, and they put things into their life that balanced their life and let them go ahead and do it. And yeah, this is a brilliant book for people to have on
Well, and I will
many
tell
levels. So.
you, the scariest rebloom for me was public speaking. And I know this sounds insane because I'm on national television all the time, but
Yeah,
my biggest fear that I had to conquer was to start speaking tied to my book. It was just really, really intimidating for some reason because when I go on the Today Show or I go on live with Kelly, like I'm a TV host, I'm a character, right? Like I'm just sort
right.
of, you know, I'm just like presenting information, but like there was something very like raw and vulnerable for me to be in front of 250 people talking about my book or sharing tips and strategies. I didn't know how to make a PowerPoint. Like, how am I going to, like, what are my visuals? How am I going to do this? What's the AV? How do I hold the mic? And now I speak all the time, but gearing up for that first speech, I mean, I was a hot mess.
Well, so I was a speech teacher at a university for 18 years. So you are not alone. You are not alone. I can tell you, you're in a very big club. But you know, it's doing exactly what you did. It's putting everything together, but it's also practicing. And the more you get out there and the more you do it, it gets easier. But it's scary. It's
Yeah.
really, really
Well,
scary.
guess what? You can get paid to do it. So
Yes.
that's like how my business has evolved.
And
Yeah.
I so appreciate that you shared that because
Yeah.
someone might look at your resume and your Instagram, your social media and think, oh, I could not, you know, she would never have a fear. She's so
Right.
confident. She can do all these things. Look at her. And the fact that you shared that, and the fact that you've shared very vulnerable, hard things throughout your life, I think is so brave and so, I just applaud you for that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm the queen
Well,
of oversharing.
but I think what people want to hear is they want to hear authenticity and they want to hear the truth. And I think we can all begin to see that sometimes, as you said, what we see on social isn't real. And I know that people have appreciated our authenticity about what we're going through because it may look one way. And it also, these are the things sometimes that we do, but it's not really who we are. And we need to share a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing that we can do to connect with others is being
And I
authentic.
also think, like, just thinking about, like, I always think about, why am I sharing this? Am I sharing
Mm-hmm.
this to make someone laugh? Am I sharing this to teach someone something? Am I sharing this to inspire someone? Or am I
Mm-hmm.
sharing this to heal myself? Right? It's never just look at me or look at this. There has to be some intention behind whatever it is you're putting out there, and then it can't help but be authentic.
Yeah, I love that. I recently shared that came close to being scammed, and I felt so stupid because I get those all the time and I never fall for it. And this one I almost did. It worked out fine. But I wanted to share the story because maybe it will help somebody else to not go down that road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was really amazing to me, the responses, because I think when you are real and you share something and you're sharing it because you want to be in service of someone or help them, or, I think there's some beauty to that.
Definitely.
I would agree. I would agree. So, of all the pivots that you've had, Megan, along the way, what have been some of your favorite stops in this journey so far?
You know, I'm not a very reflective person. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like so grounded in gratitude and the here and now that I don't spend a lot of time like musing about what was or what will be. That would take me like a long walk to figure out what the favorites were.
Yeah. That's okay. Do you have anything on the horizon? Do we have new things that you're looking toward on the horizon?
So I did a new reality show. I hosted a reality show called My Perfect Day. It streams on a streaming platform called Very Local. We did 6 episodes. I was super, super proud of that. I'm like a fairy godmother who goes in and grants deserving people their wishes.
Oh, I love that.
We
Love
filmed
it.
in Kansas City all last winter. I really loved making that. I hope there's more TV in my future. That it was one of the greatest joys of my career, was getting to, to celebrate these people and to show them that they mattered and to give them a perfect day. It was the
Oh,
best job I ever got to do.
that's
So
amazing.
I'd be
Yeah.
super blessed if there was more TV in my future. Um, a lot more public speaking, a lot more spokesperson work. I will continue to make the magazine on a smaller scale, and that's really where I'm at.
I see all of that happening.
I see all of that, and managing three children,
My
three
my,
very
uh,
busy
my
children.
daughter is a freshman in high school, so that's
Oh
my
boy.
greatest life challenge right now.
Yeah,
Is
that's going to be
Yeah,
fun.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wish
Good
I'd
luck with
met
that.
I wish I'd met you earlier because Jamie and we're part of a conference that I'm co-hosting next year called Live Courageously, Rebloom. You would have been such a good speaker for that. So, but we already have
oh,
the lineup, but maybe the next
Next
time.
one.
I would love
Yeah.
that. I really enjoy connecting with people. I'm an introverted extrovert, but I enjoy a good conference.
Yeah. Well,
I'm an introverted extrovert. Lori's just an introvert.
yeah,
But
I'm
you're
an
an
introvert.
introverted extrovert.
Totally. That's why podcast, what? I mean, I love teaching. I do love that because
Yeah.
I'm with kindred spirits when I'm teaching because they're all creative people and you don't have to make small talk with that in
No,
those groups.
No,
We just get each other right from the get-go.
I love that.
Yeah, I
it's
love that.
amazing. Well, Megan, what is some advice that you love to give when you're out speaking or when women talk to you or people talk to you about their own journey? And what do you like to share with them?
So I feel very strongly that gratitude is the secret sauce in life. And
Mm.
figuring out to have how to have an attitude of gratitude that works for you is so fundamentally important. Um, for a long time, I felt like, oh, to practice gratitude, I have to keep a gratitude journal and it has to be laborious. It has to be this homeworky thing where I write 5 things I'm grateful for. And I could never really make that click and stick until I changed that practice into what I call finding the yay and asking myself or my family what made me say yay today. Did I really, really learn how to ground myself in gratitude? And that practice actually started when I was losing my father, when I was having a hard time getting out of bed every day and facing my day. I gave myself this job of focusing on one thing that didn't stink every day and documenting it and sharing it on social media. So it could have been like daffodils blooming on the end of my walk. It could have been foam latte and on a latte in the shape of a heart. It was something that even in this really hard time was good, and forcing myself to see it and document and share it. And that really cemented this gratitude practice in my life where I pause to appreciate something no matter how hard my day is or how hard the thing is that I'm going through. And if you're able to find a way of pausing to appreciate the good in your life, you will be, you'll live longer, you'll be happier, you'll be healthier, you won't have any FOMO because you know what you have is enough and you're not missing out on anything. This, my gratitude practice and figuring out how to make gratitude work for me was my secret sauce. And if I can give anybody any little taste of that, I think that's really, really important.
You've made me teary a couple times during this
Oh,
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah.
Like you've
Yeah.
really
oh
like
God, don't cry because I love to cry. If anybody cries,
Oh,
I just start bawling. It's
like
like contagious.
I'm just thinking of like, and I'm going to choke up. Oh, it's just a yay. That's all you have to do is, I'm tearing up too. It's just,
Oh,
some days
I,
are hard and it's
I
just a
love
little
to cry,
yay. That's all
ladies.
you need.
I love to cry. It is like I find it
Yeah.
so cathartic. My kids will be like, "Are you crying,
Yeah.
mom?" They do like a tear check, and I'm like, "I'm probably crying. Yeah, I love to cry.
Crying's
You
good.
also reset. I enjoy tears.
Yeah.
But sometimes my tears are in like at inappropriate, so-called inappropriate times. So no, but
You
like
know what?
I love. If somebody cries, I'm like, "Oh yes, permission to cry. Let's go."
well, I
Well,
always
and
say when I give a gift and it made someone cry, that's the best gift because
Right?
you
yeah.
when you cry, your heart is touched. I mean, that's what's
Yes.
coming out.
Well,
Yeah,
and I'm a deep empath. My heart is touched a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I think sometimes it's the release that we need. We had just my daughter lives in New York, and we just went to see Hell's Kitchen, and I had purposely picked. I was like, okay, we have to be careful because we didn't want to be triggered by anything, and I'm like, yep, this is Alicia Keys. This will be great, and it's really upbeat, and we're going along. And then at the end of the first act, there's this very powerful song, and this woman is singing about losing her son and being forever young. All three of us are bawling. They look at me and they're like, you picked this, you picked this. But my daughter said, sometimes that's the help, like we need it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to let it out. And so, and, and I giggle about it, but it obviously, it touched our hearts and souls. It made us think of our other daughter. It was really special. So tears are good. Tears are
I
good.
think so
It
too.
just shows your love.
Yeah,
Well, my friend
absolutely.
Rabbi Steve Leader, who wrote The Beauty of What Remains, he always talks about grief like in these waves. You
Yeah.
just never know when you're going to get wiped out, and you just have to like
Yeah.
let the water rush over you.
Mm.
Well, your strength, your tenacity, your pivots along the way are just a huge inspiration to us, and I know will be a huge inspiration to our listeners.
Yay.
Incredible, incredible
Thank
conversation.
you. I
I
got to.
feel like I could talk to
I
you
know.
for hours.
I
Oh,
know, hours and hours. And for our listeners, please, 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 we will have the link to Meaghan's book. Please grab that. I think it's going to be my go-to gift for my friends. I know that for sure. How about you,
I'm
Laura?
also the
Oh,
Audible, which I'm very proud of because authors
Oh,
you have to audition to do your own audiobook because it's hard work. I was a voice actress back in my acting days, so I was I was like, oh my gosh, if I don't get this job, that's going to be bad. But I'm the voice of the audible too, which
Oh my
a lot of
gosh.
people like to like walk with me. You can hear my scratchy voice and I cry.
I
And
love it.
it was very powerful for me. I had to do the audiobook during COVID and like reading the words. And I talk about my father and my friend. I talk about all the things through the book. And there are moments where I'm choked up and I'm crying, and it like,
Wow.
like it was a really beautiful cathartic process for me. So I'm very proud of it.
I'm glad to know that too, because I love a good audiobook. So, and that fact that it's in your voice and it's authentic like that, I love it even more. So
The
I'm
Spanish
definitely
language version is not in my voice because
okay.
it wasn't good enough.
Good to know.
You'll be my new walking companion.
You
Yay.
will.
I'll get the
Well,
audio.
Meaghan, thank you so much for joining us today. We are so appreciative that you said yes or yay to us. And we hope that, you just, keep thriving, and we cannot wait to connect with you more and follow along. And thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, I really want to stay in touch. I just think you're really wonderful. I'm so glad you said yes.
Aw,
Thank you. Thank you. Well, to our listeners, peace, love, and rebloom.
Life is too short not to follow your passions, so go out there and let your heart plant you where you are meant to be and grow your joy.
We will be right here sharing more incredible stories of reinvention with you. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode of Rebloom.
Until next time, I'm Jamie Jameson.
And I'm Lori Siebert.
Peace, love, and rebloom, dear friends.